My name is Melanie Shapiro, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Token. And we are giving control, we are returning control of identity back to consumers. And we start by replacing all of the things you have to carry around, your keys, your badges, your cards, your IDs, all of that. We're replacing that and unifying the experience of proving who you are. So talking way less about Token today, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the form factor decisions. So that's why these two tie pretty nicely together. And balancing your convictions with reality to deliver on that vision. So this is one of my favorite architects, and probably one of my more favorite quotes, and something that inspires me very often. In the hardware space, obviously, it's so important that we're able to balance form and function, because the two really have to move hand in hand. The iteration process is just very different than it is with software. So as he was working on the design for the Guggenheim Museum, this was something that he felt very strongly about. It is not to subjugate the paintings to the building that I conceived this plan. On the contrary, it was to make the building and the painting a beautiful symphony such as never existed in the world of art before. So to me, this means that you start with a vision of what you're trying to create. And so that vision is what inspires your kind of core pillars, the core pillars of the experience you want to end up delivering to that end consumer, whoever it is that's going to be actually purchasing and experiencing your product. But there's a balance there. The balance is between what you want to create and then your reality. It's not reality in general, it's your reality. How much money have you raised? That impacts the decisions that you make. What does your current ecosystem look like? That impacts the decision that you make. Market analysis, all of those things. You come up with those pillars, and those are the things that you hold true to, and those are the things that should define what it is that you build. And when you iterate, you come back to that, and it's always through the lens of your current reality. So you may have raised more money, the market may have changed, you may be in a better position, but all through the lens of that current reality that's yours and only yours. Because there may be someone else in your space that may be living a completely different truth and a completely different life than what your company is. Okay, so a little bit about Token so that the story I'm about to tell makes sense. So our vision is to enable people around the world to unify, enable people around the world to own their identities so that they can live with greater freedom and mobility. So the things that we stand for as a company are freedom and mobility. Those are our kind of core principles that we never move away from. They've defined the three pillars of an experience that we are willing to create. These are the things we don't compromise on. These are the things that you could put something shiny off in the corner, but we're not going to veer away from this. And those three things are: Token provides a unified experience, a trusted experience, and a familiar experience. All three of these together are core to who we are. On day one, when we built our first prototype, to now when we're live in the wild on people's hands. But let's talk a little bit about why unified is so important. So we're building an identity company. Part of the conviction that we have is around, right now, we're carrying around so much to prove who we are. Not just physically, but mentally as well, all those passwords. Identity is so incredibly fragmented, not just in the credentials that you carry and remember, but then also in the experience of proving who you are. Why is it that every single time I want to prove who I am, it's different? Swiping a credit card, showing an ID, maybe putting a lock or a key into a lock. These are all experiences where you're proving that you have the authority, your identity, you have the authority to access something else. And so part of what we had to balance here was, okay, well, the ecosystem's not really fully developed yet for us to be able to just launch a product that unifies all of your credentials and can just go out into the wild and it works. We had to make a number of partnerships happen. So we worked with MasterCard and Visa and HID and Microsoft and Google, and we had to join a number of consortiums and work on some of our own protocols. But essentially, we're working towards this ubiquitous, unified experience. And for us, that meant that we wanted to build a smart lock to complete that full experience. Do we really want to be a smart lock company? Not really, but all of the products on the market at the time weren't secure enough for us, and they really weren't compatible with what we envisioned the experience of token to be. So that was the first one. Okay, so trusted. So you've put everything about who you are into one place, right? So the first thing you're probably thinking is like, well, is that going to get hacked? Is that something that's going to end up like in the hands of a hacker somewhere in, Eastern Europe? No. So we stand for decentralization. So the first product we actually built was a hardware device for proving your identity on the blockchain. This was back in 2014. I had been in the Bitcoin space since about 2010. And so I realized the importance of being able to trust the math. Just trust the math. The people, we screw things up, right? We're the ones that end up building systems, databases that end up with holes or someone's able to get themselves into. And so being trusted is critical, but the decentralized system that we're creating where everything is decentralized on you, on your body, on your person, inside of a secure element. So that trusted hardware then becomes really important as well. So, okay, you have all these private keys, which represent credentials, that represent who you are, in one place. How do you balance this desire for having trusted hardware and security with a form factor that can be a reality and people will actually want to purchase? And so for us, we started getting closer to this form factor. And the reason it made sense was biometrics. So critical to how we prove who we are. It is who we are. There's just one of us. And so if you're putting these keys in one place and you have this secure element, well, what if as you slip the ring on your finger, you're able to actually unlock that secure element? So long as you're wearing it, it knows who you are. But as soon as you take it off, it knows it's not being worn. I'll show you. You can see. So I just took it off. Yeah. And one of the components of being trustworthy, and I don't know if anybody loves Ian Banks, but if you read Player of Games, they talked very much about having signals to be able to connect with robots. So in this world where there were many robots, how do humans connect with machines or technology? And they used light as a way to do that. So that was very much the inspiration for the LED that's on token. Knowing that, oh, it's a rainbow pattern, it knows it's me, it's happy, or a red pattern when it matches for a wrong fingerprint. So I'll try to put it on this finger, this is not the right one, it'll give you a red flash. Token's not happy. So all of these things kind of came together to create a more trusted experience. And we use both cryptography, biometrics, and then, of course, a decentralized system. So that was the second pillar that we had. And so now you've built this world. You have unified identity. People trust this technology. But how do you get it to mass adoption? One of the most important things to me, my PhD is actually in consumer behavior, was creating something that felt so familiar. So if we're talking about having to prove your identity different ways every single time that you want to prove your identity, then what if we could create an experience, if we're only going to create one, that was familiar? And it's so nuanced here. The difference of walking up to a payment terminal and doing this versus this, you can try that movement right now and it might feel insignificant and it may feel very similar, but do that 10, 20 times a day and it makes a really big difference. So our first, we sell direct to consumer, but the way we designed our beta was in such a way where some of our partners we did pilots with. And so these people were using it as their access badge. You're hustling into work, maybe you're late for a meeting, the last thing you want to be doing is fumbling and looking for something. And so this actually proved to be like a very natural response for them. And also that being cohesive the same way you're making a payment when you go out to lunch, it starts to become instinctual. And you've been making payments on opening doors for decades. This is something that we've been doing since maybe we had car keys. And I think on top of this as well, I'll show you. So these are all the ways in which you could use token. Again, I didn't want to talk too much about the product itself, but you can see how we've designed it across all of these different interfaces to be very, very similar. And I think the way as human beings we prove, the way that we interact with the physical world is with our hands. So being able to build an experience that feels natural. And that comes, I think in the last presentation we talked a little bit about this. You think certain things, you have certain assumptions, right? Oh, okay, well, people wear back braces, that makes sense, let's just do that. You know, for us, there was a lot of thinking behind why not put this on your wrist, and we talked a little bit about that. But then also, why did we eventually get into this ring form factor? So all of those things kind of funnel into this, but most importantly, I remember when we first decided we were going to move towards a ring, and we started asking people, do you wear rings? Would you wear a ring? And the difference between asking the question, would you wear a ring, and someone saying no, to would you wear something on your finger if it replaced the need to carry a house key, and a car key, and a credit card, and an access badge, and a government ID? The answer is much different. And so what your customers tell you, or your potential customers tell you, versus the behavior that they actually show sometimes could be very different. If you ask somebody who's wearing a Fitbit today, if they would have worn a bracelet or a band, they may have told you no. But maybe the proposition for wearing a fitness wearable was strong enough for them that now the answer would have to be yes. And so you want to make sure that you're not swayed too much there. You have conviction. And for us, this is something that we talk a lot about internally. Well, you can see the product. We talk a lot about this internally, and it's when you feel you've made that right decision, when you have conviction around those experiences that you want to create, sticking and staying true to them, because sometimes there is a lag in the adoption of your product. Sometimes it takes time, it takes the education, it takes creating the ecosystem to make the product work. But ultimately, the form factor that you settle on needs to be something that creates the sexiness, the appeal. It creates the magic. And so I think that's something that if you're building hardware, I would advise you spend a lot of time on early on in the process, because unlike software, you can, with software you can iterate all the way through, but with hardware, obviously we know it's so much harder. And for us, certainly we're trying to develop prototyping processes that make it a lot faster, but ultimately it will always be a little bit slower than software, and that is our life hardware. But so thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This is awesome.
Thanks.
Can you tell us, so you kindly focused on the lessons and all the things, that's super helpful. Yeah. Maybe you actually do tell us a little more about the company, when you guys started, and when is this coming, when is this becoming available?
Yeah. So we started this company in 2014, but we built another product before this. We started working on token specifically in 2016, in January of 2016. And we are, next question was when are we available? We are going to be commercially shipping in Q1 of 2019. We're already live with beta customers and on quite a considerable wait list right now, so we're pretty excited about that.
Okay, and this is gonna retail, like everyone's gonna be able to buy this online?
Yep, so you can go on our website right now, tokenring.com. Like I said, there's a bit of a wait list, but so that silver one, the one that I'm wearing right now, this one is going to retail for about $150. And then that one's rose gold, and that's a black carbonate. And they're going to be about $200.
Okay. And when you ship this, is going to work with what? What systems?
You will be able to use it at any tap-to-pay payment terminal. So anywhere Apple Pay is accepted, actually, and more. You'll be able to use it, if you buy our smart lock, you'll be able to use it as a house key. If you have a car with a push button, you'll be able to use it to start and get into and start your car. You'll be able to use it in New York City Transit in 2019, and many other cities worldwide. Chicago is already live. DC, I used it in London this year. It was pretty cool. You can use it as your HID access badge into a building, and we will be compatible. My team is over there doing like this. Passwords. We're very focused on the physical world right now, and the kind of merge of both physical and digital, but also passwords.
And what do you need on the other side for this to work? So you mentioned the New York Transit, but New York Transit is presumably
EMV, actually. So so there's an incredible thing happening in our space right now, which is this kind of standardization of protocols. We very much believe in open protocols. We believe in building something that's compatible with a very wide ecosystem. And so with the transit system, we thought we'd have to go city by city and get proprietary integrations with every municipality. But it ultimately ended up being so that there's a head of transit at MasterCard who is doing that himself. So
great. And then what will be my sort of unboxing and setup experience? I have there's an app, and then I connect my credit card.
Just like you set up Apple Pay, for example.
Yep.
And so everything is like one step. Every experience for proving who you are is one step. You don't need your phone when you're actually in the wild. You just need it for setup. And that setup experience is different per credential, but it's a flow very similar to Apple Pay across the different credentials.
Okay. And this communicates via Bluetooth?
Bluetooth and NFC. So that's important when you're thinking about your market and the realities of your market, what's happening right now. So with IoT, thankfully, Bluetooth everything has Bluetooth chip in it and is connected. So it's made our life much easier.
And I guess last question from me, and the obvious one, obviously if you lose it or if it gets stolen, you can just go to the app and turn it all off?
Yeah, so nobody can use it except for you because it has a biometric sensor on the inside. And
that's right.
Yeah, and so that's what keeps it from being, if you leave it on Starbucks, someone getting into your house. But yeah, we ultimately have created, we do a lot with cryptography, obviously, so we're creating a backup system too that will allow you to kind of create a immediate re-onboarding experience.
The biometrics is through fingerprint, or how do you?
Yeah, so that was kind of the
nice.
Importance of the form factor. Was if there's a biometric scanner and it's going to take a fingerprint, it might still be on the finger.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
You guys really thought about this, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
So what does your current team look like?
Yeah, so we are very heavily engineering. Probably about 90% of us are engineers. And we have an office, we're split between both Rochester, New York, and here in New York City over in meatpacking. All of our engineering, manufacturing, everything's done locally. We manufacture upstate. That's all in Rochester. And then here we have, my co-founder and CMO is sitting over there, Eric. Hand. So we have marketing here, and eventually we'll have biz dev as well. And we're about 20.
Hi, two things. Is there still a blockchain component to the identity verification? And can you maybe mention batteries and charging and that kind of thing?
So there's a inductive charging, so you just lay it on a charging pad, and it lasts about 2 weeks with the normal usage, and then working towards some other technology that will potentially replace that completely. And then is there a blockchain component? So on day one, there's no blockchain component. If you think about the blockchain, it's really important when you need to control for the double spend problem. So we actually have decentralized hardware that can speak to other hardware. There's communication systems built in. They all can speak to one another. It becomes important that there's a blockchain component when you're doing peer-to-peer functionality, like peer-to-peer payments. Then there will be a blockchain, and we plan to be blockchain agnostic.
Just the domain name is probably worth a lot of money at this stage, right? Token.com.
We have tokenring.com because token.com, yes, was.
Oh yeah,
it was sold for like 4 million.
Token on Twitter, but they're not token.
Yes, exactly. Well, at Token came with tokenring.com, luckily. I think I'm.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
This was terrific. Thank you.